Welcome to Ask Antar. This is a very special City of Jackson show that allows residents to actually ask questions of the city's mayor. And of course, joining us, as always, Jackson Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba. Thank you so much, as usual, for being here with us.
Thank you. I'm excited about another episode and also hearing what the residents of Jackson have on their mind and look forward to answering the questions.
Okay, so this is April.
Hmm.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. I feel the exact
Older?
same, right?
Older.
But March is a good month for me and my family. I'm happy that I'm blessed to have another year. But also, my oldest is March 18th. My youngest is March 21st. I'm March 29th, and I was born on my parents' anniversary. And my wife and I were married on March 30th, so it's an
Wow.
important month.
You broke
but
the month of March.
but I'm trying to have my pockets recover now, right? So, yeah.
All right, so we're in April and trash, there's been no interruption of trash service
Mhm.
thanks to the vote and of what happened last month.
Mhm.
But we did have a lot of questions from residents who were wondering what's going to happen now. One thing that happened with the contract, there are no garbage cans that were included in the agreed upon contract. But we had people who asked, can they get a cart? Is
Yeah.
that going to be an option?
Well, first, let me start by commending the council persons who actually voted to ensure that the residents of Jackson had trash pickup, residential trash pickup. I do believe that as a part of a negotiation to ensure that there was no interruption, we had to decide that the elimination of carts or the sacrifice of carts wasn't such an important issue that we were willing to, die on that hill and not have trash pickup. So we conceded on that point. But I do think that it does represent a missed opportunity, and maybe sometime in the future we revisit that. It was a missed opportunity because it not only would have lent itself to residents having a can who do not have a can, which means that the ability for dogs and rodents to get into trash bags that are on the side of the street would have been limited. It also means that for the workforce, the people, the men and women who pick up our trash every single day, that it would have been less wear and tear on their bodies. That probably was the biggest or the greatest driving force for my desire to see those. It's actually what we see in the industry nationwide. But no, they will not get a can by way of this contract. However, in speaking with Mr. Richards, the owner of Richards Disposal, he has indicated that he has cans left over from years of his service in New Orleans, and he's willing to give the cans for free to residents to residents who want those. They're smaller cans, not the 96-gallon that we were trying to put in the contract. It is not enough cans for every resident in Jackson to have one. And they do say Richards Disposal, City of New Orleans on them. So I don't want residents to think that this was a part of the contract and we issued a New Orleans can and we don't know what city we live in. But he is willing, if residents are so desire, to get a free garbage can. To give it until supplies, as long as supplies last. So, I'd like to hear from residents. If you want a can, then we can reach out to Mr. Richards and indicate that we'd like for people to be able to come pick up those cans. Because it's not a part of the contract, it will not be delivered to your house. You'd have to pick it up. And it would say New Orleans. Now, I'd like to find a solution to that. Maybe slap a sticker on the side of that because we're proud to be Jackson, and we don't want any confusion. But if there is a supply of garbage cans that some of our residents who do not currently have them would like to take advantage of, then possibly we can help them out.
Okay. Another question that people had, and this is, it's an obvious question, is the question about the rate. So now that the contract it was agreed upon at $851,000 a month, it's more than the emergency. Right now, residents pay roughly $37. what can they expect?
Yeah. Well, first, let me be clear on the more, right? We've sat in this particular segment, an Ask Antar segment, and we shared with the residents that because we were doing another RFP, that all indications were that the price would go up, regardless of who got the contract, and that was true, unfortunately. The missed opportunity, the fact that we had to go through this very lengthy process to secure a contract meant that we lost out. The residents specifically lost out on a cheaper rate, and not having to see a potential increase on their sanitation fee. So to answer that, if the third party manager, Jackson Water, Mr. Ted Hennepin, can collect water bills at a better rate than he is presently, then residents don't have to see any increase in their water, in their sanitation rate. Currently, he's collecting at about 52%, which is the worst in the history of our water enterprise. The city of Jackson, after everything that we've dealt with stranded water bills, the lowest we ever went to, which is not ideal, was 72%.
And let me pause you there for someone who doesn't understand what that means. You're saying that of the residents who receive water, only 52% of those bills are being paid. Is that right? Or being captured?
He is only billing. He's only capturing about 52%. Part of the challenge is his ability to bill effectively and consistently, and also to see the return. So I can't think of any business that can survive with 52% of its revenue. Just think about, for our residents who are listening, think about, could you survive with 52% of your paycheck? Could you survive if you own a business? Could your business survive with 52% of its returns? And so that is a big problem. It is not being publicized as frequently and consistently as it needs to be. And so those are very pointed questions that I think Mr. Hennepin, his team, and Judge Wingate need to answer for, because he has professed that this would be a better solution. And quite honestly, it has not proven to be that way. But so, to get to your original question, at 52%, we would have to see an increase. If he can increase that, then there would be no increase. If it stays as it currently is, then potentially it would have to raise to $42 per resident.
Okay, $42 per resident. Okay. One question that residents were asking, and it's back to the carts, is why is the city council so opposed to carts?
Well, what they said, the argument that they made is that in not doing the carts, that it could be a savings in the contract. It represents approximately $2 million in savings. The residents would have been provided a cart for less than it would have cost them to go to Lowe's to buy a cart for themselves. By our calculations and what we reviewed for a 96-gallon cart, it's about $135. They would have gotten their cart for $96 per person, even though it would not have been attached to their bill. It was built into the cost of the overall contract. And so they said they were trying to save, but it's really inconsistent, right? Because if there was a desire to save, then they would not have been fighting for the last 3 years for a waste management contract, which was $13 million more expensive than the Richards contract at that time.
And that was without a cart.
And that was without a cart. That was without a cart. It was $13 million more without a cart for waste management. $13 million cheaper with Richards with a cart, right? To be clear to people. And so that just, that is a shifting narrative at best to say that you're concerned about that. But, I guess they felt like, to change the contract in some way was a win for them. Again, that wasn't the hill we wanted to die on. But I think that the residents, you have to give them credit. They are more intelligent. They can, if you give them the numbers, if you give them the information, then they can make sense of this on their own. But be that as it may, that's what they said they wanted to do. We could have saved a lot of money. If we would have secured this contract 3 years ago, it would have been a significant savings. We could have saved a lot of money. If we would not have gone to court as many times as they filed suit against me and against Mr. Richards and everyone else, then the city of Jackson would not have had to pay out the legal fees that it paid out.
Really quickly before we go to break, I want to ask you, what do you think this contract means for those workers who are
Yeah.
working for Richards?
Well, it means a lot. It means that, where the prior contract, approximately 40% of the workforce was temp staff, meaning that they had no job security, they had no 401k, they had no vacation time, they had no health care benefits. And so this represents not only the security that we will have garbage collections, but the security in their lives. Mr. Richards has said that this workforce, with about 70 workers, all from Jackson, most from Ward 3, Kenny Stokes Ward, now have security in their lives. Now not only have a job, but they have things that their families can depend on going forward. And I think as a city, we not only need to demand of businesses in our city that they have workers' rights in mind, we have to model that in the contracts we issue.
All right, sounds good. That sounds like a great time to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Okay, so we talked trash the first segment. So this next segment, we're just going to kind of bop around with just a bunch of questions from all over.
Okay.
The first question, and this is one that even I get asked a lot. Where do I go if I want to get a pothole fixed in front of my house?
You would call 311 to report that pothole. We have a paved streets division that goes out. They're dispatched by the Public Works Department to deal with that. Now, let's talk realities, right? If we had the ability to pave all of the potholes, then we would do it. I think that I've mentioned that most things that don't happen in the city, it isn't for a lack of political will, it's for a lack of resources. And so we have to become creative in the way that we fund these challenges. Now, I think we've talked recently on a segment that many of the neighborhood streets that we travel each and every day, that we will see an increase in the paving of those streets. And so as we get into the spring, we're in the spring now, we'll start seeing more paving projects take place. The 1% Commission has issued a schedule of several streets to be done. And as the contractors deploy their resources, they'll be able to do it. But if you go to 311, they report it to paved streets. And from there, we can let residents know when they're scheduled to do it or the timeline. But they have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
It's a big city. The decline of our infrastructure has taken place aggressively. As an administration, we're proud that we've paved more miles of road than the previous 30 years before us. But having to deal with 30 years of neglect is a very difficult thing to catch up to.
Right. Okay, another question. Who maintains the ditches and the creeks in the city?
Well, they're
I'm quizzing you.
Yeah, they're the city. I know. How much do you know civics? Know who's in control. So they're city ditches, and so we have authority as well, but we work often in collaboration with Hinds County. They, over the years, that has been one of the principal things that we've asked for their support on. Now, I will say, we're also excited to announce to our residents that we are doing a bond referendum that we expect to close this month in April. And once that closes, not a bond referendum, but a bond issuance, we have what you call use tax. That is the tax that people have to pay when they purchase things online. The state of Mississippi gives the city of Jackson approximately $10 million a year for our use tax sales. We are leveraging that, meaning we're going to the market, we're going to the financial institutions and saying, listen, we'll pledge a certain portion of this money we get each year if you'll give us more money up front. We are expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 million. From that $40 million, we intend on doing storm water repairs across the city. That means that we'll be cleaning out these ditches. That means that we'll be widening channels where it is necessary so that communities that have been dealing with flooding historically, that we can give them the relief that they deserve. I think about the Presidential Hills community, where I've seen some of the worst flooding that our residents experience. I think about Hemingway Circle, that community has to deal with water coming up to the back door of their homes if they live near the creek. I think of White Oak Creek. I think of Purple Creek. All of these places across the city. I think of a man who lives in the Queens subdivision who said that each mayor has told him that they're going to solve this problem, and he's been waiting on it forever. And so when we announced this referendum, I told the engineers to call him so that we can go and look at that issue and actually apply money to this problem. The last thing that I'll say, and I'll move on to the next question, is that we have to make sure that we get past admiring problems. That means that you have somebody coming before you and saying, you have potholes, you have crime, and you have drainage, and this is bad, and we're going to solve this. That's just admiring the problem. You need to go a step further and have someone tell you how we're getting to these problems or getting to the solutions. When we talk about road resurfacing, we've leveraged the 1% so that we can do road projects and do it at a greater scale and more frequently than has been done in recent memory. When we're talking about our drinking water system, we went to Washington and got historic funding and got $800 million that, if the third-party manager does his job, can actually solve that problem for the residents of Jackson. And now when we talk about stormwater challenges, we now see money that we're leveraging. We're being creative and taking that money so that we can get $40 million up front, start tackling these issues while still having enough money in the money we get in our use tax for regular upkeep and maintenance going forward. So we're not just talking about the problem, we're giving you sound solutions to how we'll address them.
Okay. Switching gears, because we're going from here to there to there to the planetarium. There's a question about what's the status of the planetarium and when can people expect to see it?
Yes. One of the exciting projects that has taken some time to launch is the planetarium. So we just had a groundbreaking ceremony earlier in March, maybe the close of February, but we have already started construction on it. I want to be clear that while we're fond of the history of our planetarium and the planetarium we remember from our childhood, this will actually be a 21st century planetarium. It puts me in the mind of Star Trek, right? Even the way that doors open will be more consistent with a set like Star Trek was. And also it'll be a more interactive experience for people. And so we want to build a planetarium that not only Jackson residents and Mississippi residents can enjoy. We actually have one of the only planetariums in the southeastern region. And so we want this to be a regional attraction that people take advantage of. But to build the planetarium of our dreams is going to take some time. And so we anticipate somewhere around 2025 that it will be, available to the public. But it's going to be a matter of, making sure all of the pieces are in place. So it won't happen overnight, but the work is taking place. Unfortunately, we'll have to deal with the progress. We'll have to ask that people pardon our progress. Right. They won't be able to travel under the planetarium, but it won't have its weird entrance anymore. You won't have to go to the pillar that has an elevator in it that takes you up to the planetarium. You'll actually enter from the Art Center.
What do you think this means to kids, especially
Mhm.
kids who live in Jackson, to have this sort of attraction at their fingertips, or what will it mean to them?
Well, I think it allows them not only to imagine, but pursue careers in aerospace and aeronautics. It also brings front and center people who come from their community, come from their state. They can see the influence that the state of Mississippi has had on NASA. The fact that rockets are still tested in Mississippi. That people who look like a majority of our residents have been in aerospace, astronauts, and so we're truly excited about it.
All right. Well, we're going to take just a quick break, and then we'll come back in just a few minutes with more of your questions in Ask Antar. Welcome back. So there's a big topic that I want to discuss, but before we go there, let me just tiptoe back and let me just ask you just more personal stuff. Okay, so last month was spring break with the girls. Did you do anything special?
Well, unfortunately, it was one of the moments that I didn't get to do everything that I would have liked to do. I was traveling quite a bit. Most of the month I was on city business in different locations. At the very end, we got the opportunity to go to New Orleans. I took them to the aquarium, and my oldest especially is very much into the sciences, so she enjoyed that. They both enjoyed it. Then I took them to a Pelicans game. Now I'm not a Pelicans fan, but had the opportunity to do that just to get away.
Did they enjoy it?
They enjoyed it. They enjoyed it, and their spring break coincided with their birthdays, and so. It's always refreshing and rejuvenating to get some time with them.
Are you a take the cupcakes to school dad on birthday surprise?
I did take the cupcakes to school.
Okay.
We had cupcakes and pizza for our oldest. Her birthday was on the 18th, which was that Monday, the 18th of March, and the oldest was the 21st. I mean, the baby was the 21st. So I took pizzas there. I didn't get as much time to spend with my baby girl, but I love doing it, and they're just like I was when I was a little boy. When my daddy came to school, I wanted everybody to know there's my daddy, right? Yeah. So, and I'm a sucker, so I love it too. Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to a more serious matter. There is a bill in the Senate that is focused on Jackson Water. Let's talk. I mean, we only have a few minutes. So talk a little bit about that, and we can expound upon it next time, but I really want to know your thoughts.
Yeah. Not only is it paternalistic, it is thievery. It is an attempt to take over profitable resources of the city of Jackson, just like we see in the effort to take over our airport, just like we saw the effort to take over our school system, not for the improvement of any of those things, but because they have an ability to issue contracts. They have an ability to take advantage of the revenue that comes in for their own gain or own political benefit. And so, as we've been crying out for support from the state for decades, not just this administration, but administrations prior to us, they've declined to support that. In fact, Senator Parker went as far to say, now that we have this money from the federal government, well, let's be clear. Senator Parker was not with me when I was advocating for that money in Washington. He didn't stand before Senate appropriation staffers and lay out the argument as to why we needed that money. He didn't work with the team that presented all of the evidence and documents and statistics and information that I was able to argue from. And so that is quite disingenuous for him to say that. And lastly, I find it very interesting that now that we have secured the money, that it now becomes an asset that they they think that they should take advantage of. And lastly, I would say it is also disingenuous for the third-party administrator who, when he came, talked about how vicious the state of Mississippi was for trying to take over our resource. And now, because people have held him accountable, because people have challenged him on things that just don't make sense, like the fact that while he's at the helm, we've still seen delays or water pressure issues when the weather gets cold. And instead of telling us it's because you all filled up your bathtubs, he simply isn't speaking candidly with people, saying, listen, there's a lot of work to be done, that we have to get into the ground and change pipes, and that's going to take some time, and I need your patience. That is a message that people can understand. That is a message that is reasonable. And if you're doing the work, it's a message that we can stand behind. And so we have to hold him to be accountable in that way.
This bill, or this proposed bill, would set up a regional authority with no say from the city.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It would put people in position that are appointed by state authorities, and they would be able to make the decisions over our water system. And let me say, the last thing is the money that we received, the federal government was intentional. The president said it to me himself. I see how the state of Mississippi treats you, and we're going to find a way to get you the money. And so what it is, in essence, is the federal government has seen the neglect. They've seen the discriminatory funding to the city of Jackson, and they went through the extraordinary step of giving money, bypassing the state, giving money directly to a city. And so now the state of Mississippi, in its viciousness and intent of, and I'm talking about the state leadership, an intent to take advantage of the city of Jackson, now is seizing the opportunity, or taking the opportunity to just take over the utility in and of itself.
Right. After it was fixed.
After we got the money that they didn't give us, right? And let's be clear, whether we're talking about bills that look at creating a judicial system, whether we're looking at bills that propose to take over our historically black colleges in the state of Mississippi, all of that is punishment for rescuing ourselves. How dare you, Jackson? How dare you, administration, look to find a solution when we have decreed that you shouldn't get that money. We have declared that there is no relief for you, and for the penalty for saving yourself is that we're going to attack you in every way possible.
With this regional authority, can they sell the system?
They can certainly enter into, they would certainly be able to enter into a concession agreement, or potentially privatize, which, as we've said before, a company coming in and doing work, or giving money on the front end for a system, they're not doing it because they're benevolent. Right. They're doing it because they want to make a profit. And so it's, the only way that they can make that profit is on the backs of Jacksonians, is to raise rates, is to make it unaffordable for people to live in their homes and afford the resources that they depend on each and every day.
Okay, so now I have a question. And as a public figure, this is something that I know you have to deal with. Even I've had to deal with this. What do you do when you hear rumors about yourself or about your family, and they're never nice? So how do you deal with that?
Well, it's an unfortunate part of the job. I'm a big boy and I'm tough, so I can handle those type of pressures that come. But it is unfortunate. It's unfortunate because we live in a salacious society. And so that's why we like the shows that are about drama. We like movies that have drama included in it. And so we attach that to real life. And sometimes people forget that these are humans connected to this, right? Even beyond me. I've talked, in this segment about my little girls, right? I've talked about my daughters. And while they're young and miss these things today, there'll come a time that someone will approach them on these things. I've heard about children that I have that are absolutely ridiculous. I've heard about my wife being connected to contracts that is absolutely and utterly senseless and ridiculous as well. What is disappointing to me is some of the people that I learn are connected to these. I've heard of preachers from the pulpit sharing these things. And little do people know that sometimes those pastors those that they would never believe are connected to business matters are doing it because they have a vested interest, right? A vested interest in destroying the credibility of someone like myself, because they're looking to have their interest in a contract met. People have to forget this is a major enterprise. Our budget alone is a $350 million budget. And sometimes people think that you're the one standing in the way of their opportunity. And they forget that you're just trying to make decisions in the best way possible that spreads these resources and meets the needs of our people. But, at the end of the day, I try not to get too high or too low. At the end of the day, I don't watch the news, right? That's how I claim my peace. When I go home, I play with my kids. My wife and I love watching murder documentaries. So, our romantic moment is say, "Hey, baby, you wanna watch a murder?" Right? So that's what we do. And we steal moments to go on trips together. Fortunately, I grew up in a family where my mother was a flight attendant. My father was a very busy businessman in his own right. And so we learned that it wasn't so much about the quantity of time, but the quality of time. And so I block out that noise, focus on my family, and I'm fortunate to live a balanced life. I work hard, and I'm very proud of the work that we do. I keep my faith center with understanding that the Lord is the one who gives gifts and abilities and directs this work. I take care of my family, keep my family front and center. And occasionally, people will see this. Occasionally, I even go out with my friends, right? Yeah, and I do that because I try to remember who I am. I try not to be too serious, but I will never disrespect or embarrass the people of Jackson. No one can ever say that they've seen me in a light or doing something that was embarrassing to the city of Jackson, because I have enough pride not only in the city and what this position means, but I have enough pride in myself that I wouldn't do that.
Well, we're almost out of time, but I want to give you an opportunity, like I always do at the end, to look into the camera, one of these cameras, and appeal to residents to send in your questions.
Yeah.
And how excited you are to answer them.
Yeah. Well, this is important for us. It's important that I hear what's on your mind. It's important that I take the opportunity to address it. I want you to know that I rely on you to communicate to people the truth, the information that comes here. And I ask that you don't take anything that I say at face value, that you go and do the research on your own. I'm not telling you what to think. I know that you know how to think. And so I want to give you information that can be vetted and you find out on your own. Lastly, when we talk about important issues, whether it's the water, whether it's the trash, I need you to be an arm that speaks out loudly about your quality of life, that you write to people in the state legislature and say, express your displeasure. And I'm talking about all corners of Jackson. When I make decisions, I'm making it for Northeast Jackson, South Jackson, West Jackson, all of our communities, because a rising tide should lift all boats. And when someone leaves South or West Jackson because they're not living the quality of life they so justly deserve, then that means that the tax burden will increase on people who live in North Jackson. And so this is a beautiful city, and we have to stand together.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for joining us. We are all out of time. You guys have a great evening, and we'll see you next time.